GutPunched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers. Navigating the insidious illness of Alzheimer's is something nobody asks for. The disease sneaks up on you and your loved one, and it feels like you've been sucker punched in the gut. Then you ask, where do we turn for help? Who do we call? What do we do? These questions and more are what we hope to answer and give you some direction and hope. Now let's join our host, Jeff Edwards.
Greetings and welcome. This is GutPunched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, episode 52, or the story of My Two Elaines. How's everybody doing? Great, I hope. We're recording this episode as we move through Easter week, and we'd like to wish everyone a happy Easter. All right, here's a question. Are you taking good care of yourself and your loved one? Hope so. Well, it's all right now. I've learned my lesson well. Because if you can't please everyone, you got to please yourself. And that ties into our rules. Okay, what are they? If you're new, they're easy to learn, but very good. And if you're a regular, you probably know them by heart. So last time we said we were going to work on a new rule. Well, today we're going to include the new one. So let us know what you think. Number one, you have to take care of yourself, because if something happens to you, who is going to take care of your loved one? Number two, you can't do it alone. You need help. Find a good caregiver group or network with friends and relatives. And number three, make a list of people, friends, relatives, co-workers who have offered to help in time of need. And then make a list of things you need done but can't do yourself because caregiving duties are overwhelming. Use the lists, start at the top, keep going till you get what you need done, and you're going to find it very helpful. And we have the new rule starting this episode. Credit goes to Morgan Van Dyke, who was our guest in episode 51. It kind of fits between Rule 2 and Rule 3. Because if you need help, and you get help, sometimes it can be awkward or scary for your loved one to have perhaps a stranger to them or even a relative that they might not remember. So here's number 4. Create a help signal. Identify a cue or phrase to confirm your loved one is comfortable with receiving help. Something that your loved one can remember, or write it down on an index card or something like that so they can save it and locate it. It will help put them at ease, and that'll make it easier on you. We'll get used to this new rule, and it's all about repetition, so you're going to hear it a lot. Okay, let's proceed. Today, we'll be talking with a former governor of Wisconsin, Martin J. Schreiber, who cared for his beloved wife, Elaine, for nearly 20 years after her Alzheimer's diagnosis, until she passed away in 2022. Now, in his book, My Two Elaines, Learning, Coping, and Surviving as an Alzheimer's Caregiver, Schreiber shares his heartbreaking experience watching his wife, Elaine, transform into a person who no longer recognized her husband and children. Part love story, part practical advice. I had previously said that this is going to be a very interesting conversation and full of practical advice for caregivers. That, my friends, is an understatement. I was never so touched by an interview. Marty speaks from his heart and his experience about the challenges and the joy. That's right, the joy. So here we go. I'm on the phone with former Governor Marty Schreiber from the great state of Wisconsin. Marty, how you doing today?
Well, fine, Jeff. Thanks. It's good to talk with you. And it's a beautiful day here, almost a little chilly and so forth, but that's okay. Good to talk with you.
Good. You took care of your beloved wife, Elaine, for almost 20 years after she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Now, you've become an award-winning advocate for Alzheimer's caregivers, and at 85, you're speaking around the country. What drives you to continue sharing your story? And where do you get all this energy from?
Well, God-given energy, I think. But what drives me is in living with my wife with her Alzheimer's for all that period of time, I learned some things, many of them too late, but hopefully early enough to help anybody else who finds themselves as a caregiver. I've learned that if there's one thing worse than Alzheimer's, it's ignorance of the disease. And ignorance of the disease by the medical profession who doesn't really understand there are two patients, the person who is ill and also the caregiver. And I want to drive home the fact that people should be aware that over 40% of caregivers die before their loved one due to stress-related illness. Therefore, I stress you've got to be able to and want to take care of yourself. But then the other point that drives me is the fact that if we can join the world of the person who now is, it's going to help them on their journey, and it's going to so much reduce our worry and our own anxiety. And I value and treasure so much the opportunity to meet with caregivers to help them understand how best to learn, cope, and survive. I've been on this Alzheimer's journey, and I know where the bad pitfalls are. I know where the journey becomes difficult. And what I'm saying is if anyone is going on this Alzheimer's journey, please sit next to me for a moment before you take another step and just listen to me for a little bit. And I think by doing that, I think your journey is going to be just a little bit easier.
That's a great point. We're going to talk a little bit about your book, My Two Elaines, which is now available in softcover. You depict your wife's battle with Alzheimer's as you watched the disease progress and transform her from the Elaine you fell in love with to the Elaine who no longer recognized you or your children. Now, that had to be heartbreaking to experience and equally as hard to write about it. Why is it important to you to share her story in this way?
What is so important is for us to understand the disease. If there's one thing worse than Alzheimer's, it's ignorance of the disease. And I've said by the medical profession, but also by we caregivers. What I mentioned the importance of joining the world of the person who now is. So as long as I would argue with Elaine, it didn't happen on a Thursday, it was a Friday, it wasn't the Smiths, it was the Joneses. Understand that why must you ask me the same questions over and over and so forth. And so I began to understand that she's not remembering or knowing she's asking those questions. And I can't keep her in my world, so I've got to join her world. And so, for example, she asked me, how are my parents once? Oh, I said, they're both dead. No, they're not, she said. I said, Elaine, your parents are both. The shock on her face when she realized she didn't say goodbye, much less attend the funeral. So I promised myself I would never put her through that again. Mm-hmm. And so the next time she asked me, how are my parents? I said, they're doing well. I said, your mom likes her church, your dad likes his sports. She said, that makes me feel so good. Oh, she said, that makes me feel so good. So that's what I call therapeutic fibbing, to join the world of the person who now is. So that's why the name of the book, My Two Elaines. This wonderful, beautiful girl I fell in love with when I was a freshman in Latin class in high school, who we had 4 children and 13 my friend, my advisor, my companion, everything you could ever want in a life partner. And then she transitioned when she was about 63 years of age, getting lost to and from places she had been going to and from for the past 10 years. She was a great cook and sometimes would mess up her recipe so badly that she would cry. So that was the beginning of the second Elaine. And so I didn't understand the disease. I tried to keep her in my world, and finally when I began to understand joining her world was the important part, and that made all the difference in the world.
Good advice, it really is. Now, as a caregiver, what was the most challenging part of having a loved one live with a disease? There's stages they go through. How did you adapt?
Yeah, I think the most challenging was to have dealt with my own ego, my pride. So I thought I could do all of this alone, and so I didn't get the respite that one should get. And I got involved. I'm fighting this disease. I'm going to do the disease. Well, what happened was I was so involved in my prideful fighting this disease, I neglected to do the one thing that was necessary, and that is to help my wife, Elaine, live her best life possible. And so I try and have caregivers understand that we've got to not have so much pride. We've got to be willing to ask for help. We've got to be willing to understand that to ask for help is a sign of courage and not giving up. That was the most difficult part of the journey. And once I began to understand that the wise thing for me to do is to ask for help, And also, once I understood that I was no good to my wife if I was becoming irrationally irritable, if my health was being affected, if I was drinking too much and not able to handle certain situations, we can't beat this disease. Right now, 20 years ago, 25, you couldn't cure it. You couldn't delay it. Today, you can't cure it. You can't delay it. So for the time being, we have to set aside our goal of fighting this disease. But what we can do is set up a very realizable goal, which I believe can be extremely satisfactory, and that is to help our loved one live their best life possible. And once we do that, we can at that point then join their world and understand therapeutic fibbing and understand redirection and understand maybe why we maybe need help for respite and why we need to share our situation with others who will going to be understanding and helpful.
Right. Now, you give caregivers practical advice and takeaways in a section titled What I'd Wish I'd Known and What I'd Wished I'd Done Differently. Can you tell us some of those things?
What I did was I tried to keep Elaine in my world. And Elaine, it didn't happen on a Thursday, it was on a Friday. And Elaine, it was the Smiths, it was the Joneses. Elaine, why are you asking me the same question? And so forth. One thing I learned not soon enough was the importance of joining her world. And by doing that, it reduced also her anxiety and worry as well as reduced my worry and anxiety. But then I also learned the importance of asking for help. I also learned, before I came out with the printed edition of the book, I found a series of notes and journals that Elaine had been keeping since her diagnosis. And each chapter begins with one of Elaine's notes. When I read those notes, I realized that, yes, we had prayed together, and yes, we had cried together, but never did I understand the courage that it takes to be diagnosed with this disease and then to continue forward. And never did I understand how much she depended upon me as her lifeline. And I think once I saw that more clearly, how much she depends upon me as her lifeline, I began to realize that we caregivers must realize we are a lifeline. And if we hypothetically are on a ship and our dear loved one falls overboard, we will throw them a lifeline and they will grab it and they're going to be safe. No, they're not. Why? Because the lifeline breaks. Well, why does this lifeline break when we're trying to help our most beloved? And we know at it by not eating right, by not getting enough sleep, by not getting enough exercise, by not having socialization, by not doing all of the things that we should be doing in order to have a normal life. And so it is so challenging in and of itself to be a caregiver that we have to make sure to help our loved one be there, have their best possible life. But we in turn then must realize we've got to ourselves have our best possible life to help our loved one on their journey.
Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier that the percentage of the caregivers that pass before their loved one does, and it goes back to taking care of yourself. It seems so simple, but it's really something you have to pay attention to. One of the things I do every week in my podcast, we have 3 rules that we follow, and I'm working on number 4. It ties in. You got to take care of yourself. You can't do it alone. You need help, and you have to learn to make lists and follow the list and get as much help as you can, because if you don't, who's going to take care of your loved one?
But also, who's going to take care of you?
Exactly.
And so my children had an intervention with me. They sat me down and they said, Dad, you're going to be dead before Mom, and we don't want to lose both parents. And then they said, what about your grandchildren? Why should they lose both grandparents? What about us? Why should we lose both? So if one takes care of themselves, it's not a matter of selfishness. It's a matter of realizing that as a caregiver, you're a very important person in this whole scene of life. An important person, yes, to your loved one who has Alzheimer's, but you're also an important person to help your children and your grandchildren and your friends also get through this and to learn and to experience and to love. And that makes such a big difference. One thing I do want to mention, because Alzheimer's is not what you call a chicken casserole disease. Hypothetically speaking, if I have heart surgery, what's going to happen? Well, I'm recovering and you're going to bring me a chicken casserole. I fall and I break a hip. What am I laid up? People bring me chicken casserole. Because my wife may have Alzheimer's, people are ignorant of the disease, and because they are ignorant, they don't know what to do. So they stay away. So friends of 25 and 30, maybe even 40 years, because they don't know what to do, know what to say, they do nothing. And then all of a sudden, the caregiver not only is dealing with his loved one, but also feeling deserted, abandoned. And so what becomes important also, Elaine and I were having lunch at the assisted living in the cafeteria. And while we're having lunch, she begins to cry. I said, why are you crying, Elaine? Well, she said, I'm beginning to love you more than my husband. Well, I didn't ask her what's wrong with her turkey husband. But here's what that meant to me and what is so important, I think, for we caregivers to understand. And that it is not necessary for our loved one to know our name in order for hearts to touch. What is our goal? Our goal is to help our loved one live their best possible life. How do we do that? Well, among the things, by having our hearts touched. And so it's not necessary for Elaine to know my name in order for our hearts to touch, because we can have our hearts touched by holding a hand, by giving a hug, by singing a song, by smiling, by just being there. And so I tell friends and relatives of the person who is ill, yes, they may not know your name, but that's not important. By going and visiting and by giving them a sense of hearts touching, you're just doing such a magnificent service to humankind. Someone who is knowing that they're losing their memory, their mind, but at the same time can feel hearts touching. Oh gosh, people should hopefully just understand what a difference they can make in the feeling of one person's life.
You talked about friends who don't know what to say, and so they kind of stay away. That's an excellent point, because you do lose friends, but also part of them not knowing about the illness. In some cases, they don't want to be associated with it. It's not catchy that way. You know, it's not like a cold that you're going to get it from somebody else. But they also, way back in the day, there was a stigma for people who had an illness like this, and they didn't want to get close to anybody. And that's sad. So education needs to happen. And what you're doing is actually educating people. Now,
that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing too. And thank God for that. Terrific what you're doing.
Thanks. You also share some very direct advice for men taking care of their wives. How have you seen men in particular struggle as a caregiver? I see it a lot in the men's group I go to, because everybody's story is just a little bit different. Place in the journey is a little different. But what have you seen?
There's two demons for a male caregiver, I think. Two demons. One is pride and the other is alcohol. And I dealt with both of them. And I would like to tell you I beat them up horribly, but I can't tell you that because sometimes they still take control. But when I say pride, I mean thinking I'm so good that I don't have to ask for help. You know, thinking I'm so good that whatever I think is best for my wife, Elaine, is the best, even though helping her live her best possible life is maybe to be in assisted living. Or maybe I'm so prideful that I don't want to get help, so I'm going to stay with her all the time. And there goes my health, there goes I'm irrationally irritable. So it's pride that I think can have a devastating impact not only on the caregiver, but also on the one that we love, want to try and take care of. And then we get to the devil's poison, we get to alcohol. I'm going to tell you, for a while, I tried it as a relief. You know, you put in your days, and now it's get to be 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. And gosh, I deserve it. I made it through the day. And so 1, 2, 3, 4 cocktails and so forth. And what does that do? It just messes up your head, and it messes up your thinking, and it makes you more irrationally irritable, and it doesn't solve a thing. And so being a caregiver is one of the toughest jobs in the world. I think one thing that we have to understand, and that is that we begin as a loving partner. And what happens is we morph from being a loving husband or wife, we morph into being a caregiver. And we have to understand that caregiving is different than being a upfront loving husband or wife. And being an upfront loving husband or wife is different than being a caregiver. And so we have to, as this journey continues, as we morph from being a loving husband or wife into being a caregiver, we have to understand that we are morphing, that we are changing. Just as our loved one is changing, so are we also changing. And what we have to do in that changing is adapt a new kind of thinking. Yes, it's okay to therapeutic fit. Yes, it's okay to redirect. Yes, it's okay to ask for help. Yes, it's okay to share our concerns with loved ones. Yes, it's okay to acknowledge the fact that, yes, I am grieving. Yes, it's okay to feel down and out because it's one of the toughest jobs in the world. And so as we morph into that process of being a caregiver, it can help us. It can help us on this journey. And also it can help us as we change to say and focus on, okay, what are the moments of joy? How can we have them? And so when Elaine was diagnosed with this disease, the doctor said, among other things, go for a walk. Walking is the best exercise for the brain. So we would go for a walk, and in my mind, 30 minutes, that's the walk. We were walking. She said, oh, look at that beautiful flower. Come on, Elaine, we have to come on, look at that beautiful bird. Come on. And so what I began to realize is I'm no longer this loving husband trying to keep the daily schedule that I once had. I'm morphing into a caregiver, and a really smart caregiver takes advantage of these opportunities of moments of joy with our loved one, as looking at a beautiful flower or seeing a bird or even watching the leaves roll across the lawn or just sitting holding hands and humming or singing to one another.
Wow. That's outstanding. A way to look at it. And I had not myself looked at it that way. Actually, I just retired, so-called retired recently after 30 years at a job. And I just was overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that I had to do between working and then doing the podcast and taking care of my wife. I didn't see the joy. I didn't feel the joy. And that was one of the reasons that I had to stop. You just kind of pointed it out. It kind of hit me in the head. It's like, dummy, you got to look at it that way and not the way I was. Well, I can do this. Here's my schedule. That was a great point. Now, we know, according to the Alzheimer's Association, there's more than 6 million Americans that live with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, and more than 11 million people are their unpaid caregivers, and I guess it's got to be probably higher than that. And that's a lot of people, and it seems to be getting worse for whatever reason. What encouragement do you have to share with other caregivers and other people?
Well, I think, number one, to better understand this disease. And I don't mean how the amyloids and the proteins and the various sections of the brain work. I'm talking about understanding the life of a person who has Alzheimer's, to understand the importance of joining their world, of knowing this disease can't be beaten, of knowing that we can set a realizable, satisfying goal of helping our loved one live their best life possible. We can do those things that are of a positive nature, and we can morph into being a caregiver so that we are in a ready position to enjoy and to share moments of joy that ordinarily in a normal, healthy relationship wouldn't mean a hill of beans. But when our loved one has Alzheimer's, those moments of joy, oh my gosh, it's like a mountain of happiness, and we look for more of them. But then also to understand the importance of asking for help, and to know that asking for help means you're not giving up, and to ask for help is a sign of courage. Yeah, those are tough things to do, and it's easy to talk about, but you and I both know as we live it, it's tough. One philosopher, who it was, I don't know, but something like, if bad things happen, you can yell and you can scream and you can even revolt, or you can step back, analyze what the situation is, and then determine how you can make it better. And so we can't change the fact that Alzheimer's cannot be cured or prevented. But what we certainly can do is make a determination to help our loved one live their best life possible by taking care of them, but also by caregivers taking care of themselves.
Yep, spot on. That's good advice. If you hear this, pay attention to it. These are the things that we talk about all the time. And this gentleman is sharing his life and sharing his journey with his wife, Elaine. He's got some years on me, so take it from somebody who's got more experience. You've got a good attitude about it, and I know that it rubs off, and you're doing a lot of speaking engagements. I can't believe you did over 100 in 2024. It made me tired just reading that. We appreciate what you do, what you've done, and the advice you've given. Your book is now available in soft cover, and they can go to the website, my2elaines.com, or on Facebook.com/My Two Elaines and get a copy of his book. This guy knows what he's talking about. He's been through it. Great information and great tips. So if you've got somebody that you know, a family member, friend or relative who has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, take his advice. We want to thank you so much for your time, Marty. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Really, really has. You hit me with a couple things that I had not thought about before. Now I've got to go back and rethink some things and change some of the things I do. So it's been very, very helpful.
Jeff, I wish nothing but the best for you and your wife on this journey. I admire so much of what you're doing, how you're trying to help others on this journey too. As you said, sometimes we can't control what's going on, but we can step back and understand what is and figure out how to try and make it better. And that's what you're trying to do. So with admiration, I am pleased and proud to be with you.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, what you've given me is phenomenal. Really has been. I really hope you enjoyed our conversation with Marty Schreiber. At 85 years of age, he's got the receipts. Alzheimer's is a disease that has so many variables, twists and turns. And just when you think you know something, boom, it changes. And you have to continue to learn, cope, and survive. There were several things Marty shared that I had never considered. Now I have to change some of the things I do and do the things I'd never considered. We are very grateful for Marty, who shared his wisdom with me and all of you. You can get a copy of his book, My Two Elaines, by going to his website, my2elaines.com. We should have it listed on our website, GutPunched.com, sometime this next week.
We'll be right back to Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
In the fight against Alzheimer's, now matters more than ever. Because now we have treatments that could change everything. But now is no time to stop. Now we've got momentum, so now we use it. Now we seize the moment. Now we turn the tide. Now we make a difference and make some noise. Now is the time to get up, get out, and join the movement. At the Alzheimer's Association Walk to End Alzheimer's, held in over 600 communities nationwide, and we need you with us. Because now is the time for hope. Join the fight at alz.org/walk.
This is Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers.
We brought up a great and very anticipated event that'll be happening later this year. It's the Walk to End Alzheimer's 2025. Teams are being formed in your towns and cities right now. You know, I'm still trying to get a complete list of where and when they will take place. I looked it up. There are 626 locations around the country. Now, the easiest way to find out about your town, go to the Alzheimer's Association website, alz.org. In the search box on top, type in Walk to End, and then scroll down. Put in your zip code, and you'll be directed to more information. We'll be talking about this a lot as the year progresses. Why? Well, this year, 2025, Gut Punch, Alzheimer's, and Caregivers will have our own team. And we are looking for friends and listeners to join the team to help raise some money and, of course, walk if possible. Our goal will be to raise as much money as we can. In Lee County, Florida, where I reside, our walk will be on November 8th. That means we have 8 long months to raise some money. The walk in Naples, Florida, which is right down the road here, will be on November 22nd. We will keep you posted in the next month on how and where you can give. We'll be posting on social media soon. We're going to try and get this on our website as soon as we possibly can. I still have to figure all that stuff out, though. Our website is gutpunched.com. We'd like as many people as possible to join our team, and we'll have information soon, promise. Help us help others in the fight against Alzheimer's. Thank you very much. You know, if you know someone who might be a good guest or someone who has a unique story to tell of their journey, have them contact us. We'd love to talk with them. For more information, you can check out Alzheimer's Support Network at alzsupport.org/about-us. To find your local chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, you can visit alz.org/local resources/find your local chapter. Or you can call their toll-free hotline at 1-800-272-3900. The Dubin Center can be found at dubincenter.com. Dr. Perry's HealthSpan Partners website is healthspansouthwestflorida.com. outlook.com. And for more information on the guide, it's probably easier to just Google it, Edge it, or DuckDuckGo it. If there's a topic you would like to hear more about, let us know. The website is gutpunched.com, and the email address is gutpunchac@outlook.com or jeff@gutpunched.com. Help us grow and share this podcast with others who may need information and resources. There is help and hope out there for everyone. You just might not know where and how to find it, and that's why we're here. Thanks for joining us, and please come back again. God bless.
This has been Gut Punched, Alzheimer's and Caregivers, with your host, Jeff Edwards. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to us on all the platforms like Spotify, Apple, Pandora, and more. If you have a question or want to get in touch, our email is gutpunchedac@outlook.com.